This is Patrick Russell. I'm interviewing Melvin Lubbers for the first time. This interview is taking place at Mitchell, South Dakota on July 16th, 2021, and this interview is being conducted by the Making History Project. Melvin, how are you doing today?
Good.
All right, and can you please tell me when you were born?
January 17, 1931.
And where were you born?
Hansen County, Alexandria, South Dakota.
All right, and can you describe for me your hometown when you were growing up? What was it like?
It was a small town. Well, I was born and raised in the country, and went to high school at Alexandria, and went to country school first 8 grades.
All right, and how big was your country school?
I think there was 15 of us, all 8 grades.
A total of 15 people for all 8 grades? Wow, that really is a small school.
This is out in the country.
Uh-huh. And what were you all doing out in the country?
My parents farmed, and so that we were obligated to go to the country school because it was too far to go to town. This is back in the 1930s.
Okay. What kind of farming?
Mostly corn and oats.
All right. And how big was your family growing up?
I had a sister, there was just my mom and dad, my sister and myself.
All right, small family.
Yes.
And how old was your sister?
She was 4 years older than I was.
Okay. And how long did you go to school?
I went to high school at Alexandria, town
All right.
school.
And you graduated from high school?
Yes.
All right. Did you have any hobbies or sports in school?
Oh yeah, I played basketball.
All right. And anything else?
No hobbies, but just the general rule of going to school,
Okay. And
meeting friends.
did you also work on the farm?
Yes.
And what did you do?
Well, mostly did the odd end chores and so on, and my dad farmed with horses at the time, and of course I loved the horses, and I'd work with the horses.
And how big was the farm?
A quarter and an 80.
Okay. And so what did you do after high school?
After high school, I started working for a hatchery, chicken hatchery at Emory, South Dakota, and I worked there for 2 years, and I was drafted into the military.
Okay, and what year was that?
1952.
All right, and so this was, you're drafted for the Korean War?
Right.
All right. And how did your family feel about you being drafted?
They weren't happy.
And how did you feel about being drafted?
Didn't bother me.
All right, just something to do? See the world?
But actually, I got married before I went in. And so my wife, she stayed here in Mitchell till I got home.
Okay. And you were drafted, you said, into the Army?
Yes.
All right. And where did you go to basic training?
Camp Roberts, California.
All right, and how was basics training for you?
It was 16 weeks of hard training, combat training.
And can you describe some of the things that you did?
Well, we were intensively working with the M1 rifle, the mortars, and get a good overall schooling on all of that.
And what about the physical exercise? How was that?
The PT was strenuous. They put us on, the last thing that we did before we graduated was they put us full field pack with the rifle on a 20-mile walk.
And how'd you fare on that?
Well, I made it, but I wouldn't have not made it if it hadn't have been for an Indian kid from the reservation. He says, now when they give you a 5-minute break, he says, go lay down in the ditch and put your feet up to the top, which brings the blood back. And that's how I made it.
Oh, good advice.
Yeah.
All right. And how heavy was your field pack?
I would just estimate maybe 40, 50 pounds. I don't know.
And how did you feel about the Korean War before you actually went over there?
Never gave it a thought. Just, well, whatever comes, you got to do.
All right. You were doing your duty.
Yep.
And so you're in the Army. What was your highest rank?
Sergeant.
All right. Were you eventually in charge of a platoon?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And what type of training did you receive on particular weapons or?
Well, I had a cross training. Particularly, I ended up with as a rifleman to start with, but I went to heavy weapons, and when I went to heavy weapons, I went to the 50 caliber machine gun.
Okay. And you're in the Army. Which division and battalion, regiment were you with?
I was in the 3rd Division, 7th Regiment, Infantry.
Okay. And where was that based out of?
In Korea.
Okay. But in the States, where was its home base?
Home base was Camp Roberts, where I took my physical, and I went directly to Japan to start with.
And when did you deploy overseas?
Would have been May of 52.
And when you deployed overseas at that point, how much training had you had?
Well, I had 16 weeks of infantry training.
So that was it?
That was it.
So you're talking about 4 months?
4 months.
Okay. And what type of equipment or weapons were you qualified to use?
I was qualified to use most of all the rifles, all the BAR, the M1 rifle, all of the smaller weapons, and I was also qualified for the 50 caliber machine gun.
And that's what you primarily used in your
Yes.
service? Okay. So you were in charge of a machine gun?
I was in charge of 4 50 caliber machine guns.
Okay. And when you went to Korea, where did you land?
When I went to Korea, I landed at Yokohama, and from Yokohama they put us on trucks, and that's when we didn't know where you were or what you was going to be doing, but they put you to work.
Okay. So you first arrived in Japan, right?
I first arrived in Japan, and I had 2 months of intensive training in Japan, and they said we were going to be MPs, but that we knew better. In 2 weeks we knew that wasn't true, and we got trained for heavy weapons and light infantry.
All right, so you had another 2 more months of training
Right.
in Japan, and then you eventually shipped out to where?
We shipped out to Korea, and we ended up in Yokohama.
Okay. And what did you do from Yokohama?
They shipped us out of Yokohama the next day after we landed, and took us to well, I ended up at Whitehorse Mountain.
Okay. And where is Whitehorse Mountain in Korea?
just exactly the location, but it's on the Sherwan Valley side.
Okay. So you got the DMZ, right?
Yep.
Is it north, south, east, west? You recall?
Of the DMZ.
Mm-hmm.
We were just north of the DMZ.
Okay. And what was going on in Whitehorse at that time?
Whitehorse Mountain, before I got there, was taken and lost 12 times in 14 days.
All right, so back and forth, back and
Back
forth.
and forth.
And there was a lot of heavy fighting.
Yes.
Do you recall who was involved in that fighting?
No.
Like different groups besides yours?
Different groups, yeah.
And who was on the opposite side taking this mountain back and forth, winning it and losing it?
The Chinese.
All right. And were you surprised to see the Chinese in Korea?
Well, they told us we were not surprised, no. We knew it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what else did you, well, besides Whitehorse Mountain, so did you participate in retaking that?
Yes.
All right. And how many times did you have to go back and forth with Whitehorse Mountain?
I only went once.
All right, and so you retook it.
I went, we took it once and retook it.
Okay. All right. Can you tell me about that experience?
Well, it's not good. It's not a good experience. It's this experience of war that you can't imagine, and the details I will not say.
All right. Was it, well, what about the weather at the time? What was that like?
The weather in Korea is very similar to the weather in South Dakota. You have good, bad winters, and you have some hot summers. It's pretty identical.
And while you were on Whitehorse Mountain, what was the weather like?
Winter, cold.
Okay. And well, what month was that?
That was in the I think it was when I went, it was in July. It was hot then, but I was not in the intense cold there, but I was later on in, well, it would have been September, October. I was there when, in the fall of it.
All right. And how big of an area is Whitehorse Mountain?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I would say just for a guess, couple miles.
All right. And what type of engagement was there? Was it a big battles?
Yes,
All right. And just infantry?
yes. Well, no, the Air Force was there too.
And since it's a mountain, imagine it's literally a mountain.
Yeah.
And you've got trees, rocks.
There are no trees anymore. They were mowed down.
Oh, okay. So it's a mountain with no trees,
No trees.
and you've got, depending on where you are, you're either going up or going down.
That's right.
And a lot of people on both sides.
Yeah, both sides.
And a lot of shooting
A lot of it.
and artillery.
Yep, lots of artillery.
And there's not really a lot of hiding either.
No, digging.
Digging. And how long were you on Whitehorse Mountain during your operation?
I was in the vicinity of Whitehorse for about 3 months.
And every day was combat for 3 months?
No,
Okay.
no.
So tell me that kind of schedule.
That would vary. Whenever they decided to attack you, which was usually about, in the mornings, about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. It was usually not in the mid of the day. Yeah, some of it was, but I mean, the average was usually in the mornings.
And you'd have to deal with waves of Chinese?
Yeah.
And then you guys would push them off, and then what? Would you advance then?
No, we stayed on top. We were going to hold that part of it. The Chosen Valley is was the channel, so to speak, of the main push. And Whitehorse is just sitting on the side of the Chosen Valley, so you get a good look at what, if you were up there, what was going on and where it was going.
So you could see the other major battles going on.
Yes.
And I know you don't want to talk about what happened individually, but
No.
can you tell me what you were feeling like being in the winter, in the cold on a mountain, being attacked at 3 o'clock in the morning? Like, what was going on with you and your colleagues?
Mostly scared and young. Didn't know all the ins and the outs, and so you did a lot of praying on that. I will say this: if you were never a believer, something like this will make you a believer.
Believer in
The Lord.
And since you were in charge of 4 machine guns, was most of your fighting from somewhat of a distance?
Sometimes close, sometimes distance. That varied.
And so this went on for 3 months, pretty intensive.
Well, you never knew. It could be 1 or 2 times a night sometimes, and other times it could be 2-3 days and do it again.
And while you were on top of the mountain, you never gave it up?
No. Yes, we gave it up. We were beat down.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when did that come in the context of the 3 months?
Like I mentioned, it happened 12 times in 14 days.
But were you there?
No, I was
Okay.
there only one time, that up and then down.
All right, so you did get beaten down while you were there.
Yes.
All right, and when that was happening, again, you don't have to get into the details, but the goal is to try to express to other folks of what that's like. So how were you feeling at that point? Was that chaotic?
Very, very chaotic, yes. It, I will give the Air Force a lot of praise for helping, because they softened things up. If it hadn't have been for that, we probably wouldn't have made it.
And was it more of being overwhelmed by numbers that would cause you to get down that mountain?
Mm-hmm.
It was a surge?
Surge.
Did they also use artillery to soften up the lines?
They used artillery, yeah.
And then they came up as like a charge of...
Yeah.
And so besides the Whitehorse Valley, did you have any other combat engagements in Korea?
No, I did not. I was taken out and went to the back and served the rest of my time out in the back.
So how much time did you spend in total in Korea?
I was there about 6 months.
6 months, and half of that was in intensive combat on Whitehorse Mountain.
Right, in that area.
And, okay. And were you ever injured?
Yes, I was, but I never turned it in or anything. I took a shrapnel in the leg, but had medic wrapped it, and after that I wrapped it myself. And because the medic, we never saw him again. We don't know what happened to him.
And shrapnel from a grenade or artillery round?
It's questionable. I don't know.
And this is while you were defending your machine gun nest?
Right.
And for your machine gun nest, that's normally on the front line, right?
No, not, well, yes and no. When after everything, the war kind of slowed up, so to speak, the 50s were very intense because of the volume that they will put out. And we did carry them up to, no, they were on the line, that and the 30. And see, there's a 30 water cooled and there's a 30 air cooled. Well, the water cooled is worthless as far as winter fighting is concerned. And so it was either the 30 air cooled and the 50 air cooled that were the two weapons for rapid fire. So, and you've got to have ammo barriers for both of them. You've got to have the gunners and so on down the line. I mean, it's a setup that a group has to work.
And how many men were under your command for those 4 machine guns?
16.
And while the combat was going on, what were you doing? You were directing fire, or?
I was either directing fire or make sure that they were all working and so on. You had to go from one to the other to make sure everything was working.
Were you able to call in artillery if you needed?
Yes,
And did you do that?
yes.
What about communicating with the Air Force?
That we couldn't, the lieutenant took care of that. We had a first lieutenant with us, very good man. He did a lot for us.
And so when you get your guns positioned, were they positioned like in a camp, or you were on a ravine? What?
Slope of a hill.
Aiming down?
Well, that's the position you want to hold, is aiming down. But sometimes you're aiming up when you're going up.
Okay. But usually it's in the front, right?
Right.
So if you're, what I'm trying to get at, I guess, is if you're going to get attacked, you're going to be one of the first ones to get that.
Right. That was one of the weapons that the Chinese went after the first, is that machine gun.
And how would they go after you guys?
One right after the other. They had no respect of life. They'd just come at you.
And I think you mentioned earlier that the cold had an impact on you still to this day, right? What happened as a result of the cold?
Well, that was when when we came from Japan into Korea. That's when we were not prepared for the winter. And we went in and made a run, and we got sidetracked. And so we were, how shall I say, by ourselves with nothing, no equipment. Well, we had our gun with us, but very little ammo, and not the clothes that we needed. Yeah.
And as a result of that, what happened to your body?
Well, it froze my toes, my ears, my nose, my hands.
And you got frostbite.
And
And that still affects you to this day?
Yes.
Where?
My ears, my hands, and my feet.
And it's like what, a burning sensation or?
Well, they just got crooked and everything else. And then now this just won't heal.
So, I was just thinking what you said before about the no respect for life, where the Chinese were trying to get to your guns. So obviously you're doing your job,
Yes.
and I imagine there's quite a few of them that didn't make it because you're stopping them.
Yeah.
What happens after your battle with all those bodies?
They will be pulled off to the side.
And who does that?
Hmm?
Who does that?
Well, they have try a cleanup crew come in, but it all depends upon what's going on. So they could be there for 2-3 days, or who knows.
When you say cleanup crew, it's from the U.S.?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I did not ever understand is they would give the Chinese a chance to get their people, and they did do that, and the Chinese sometimes did it for the Americans also. So they would just, everything went quiet, and they'd sneak up and get their bodies, so to speak.
So that would be part of the very unpleasantness of war there,
Very
dealing with that.
Right.
Especially if it goes for 2-3 days or...
Yes.
And if it's 2 or 3 days, they're still attacking over,
They can be. They sometimes would. Yeah.
so you would really have it piling up.
Yeah.
Did you ever interact with any of the Chinese, whether they're POWs or...
Yeah. We took some POWs. Yeah.
And did you ever personally interact with them?
Yes.
And what was that like?
Well, I just handed them over to the lieutenant and let them go from there. I don't know what they did.
Okay.
I couldn't keep track.
And you didn't talk to them?
No. You couldn't.
And what was your view of the Chinese at that point?
You mean my thought of what I thought of them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my theory on that, my thought on that was that they don't care for life whatsoever. They're doing their job for their country, and they will just let be if they want to get killed, you know. There's no respect for their men.
You thought there was a different way they could have done it?
Yes.
Did you have any interactions with Korean civilians while you were there?
Very little. Very little.
And when you were in the back, so
Yeah.
I guess that would be the last 3 months, right?
Yeah.
What were you doing back there?
I was working on keeping weapons going, you know, that they were working, and trying to get ammo to the front line and so on.
Okay. You've heard of the phrase war is hell, haven't you?
Yep.
Do you agree with that?
Yes.
And how so?
Well, there's nothing more brutal than war, because it's either me or you. And I'd rather it be you than me.
And this was based also on your experience on Whitehorse Mountain, right?
Right.
And so what about, how did you feel at, say, 12 a.m. or 1 a.m. knowing that more likely than not there was going to be an attack at 3? Like, what were you thinking or doing at that point?
You made sure your men were all dressed and ready for it. And then the ammo brought up so there'd be plenty to take, because you had to have everything in line. You had to have your ammo barriers getting the ammo to the guns, and you've got to have the gunner, you got to have the maintenance, make sure that everybody's in their position.
And did you personally have any type of a ritual or habit before combat that you would do?
No.
You know, sometimes people say that they pray or
Well,
do something for good luck.
Everybody prays. Let me put it that way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What about after combat? What would you do? Anything to do to
After
get it out of your mind, or?
I still have nightmares.
And so that's been a long time ago. That's 70 years ago.
70 years ago.
And to this day you still have nightmares. And nightmares of, is it repeating what was happening on that mountain?
Yeah. A lot of it.
And when did those start?
About 2-3 years after I got discharged.
So it was a delayed response. And so in...
Because I still had everything else in my mind going, you know. But, yeah, after about 2-3 years.
What else was going on in your mind?
Well, it always, could I done anything different? Could I saved my buddy? Could I done this different? Could I done that different? That's what goes through your mind.
And so you lost some friends that were part of your machine gun team?
Yes.
And do you ever get used to that, losing a friend like that?
You'll always remember it.
And how often did that happen for you? So of your team of 16 men,
How often what?
like how many did you lose of their 16?
Well, I actually only lost 2, but there were others hurt.
Okay. Well, 2 is still too many, right?
Yeah, right.
And were these good friends? These were your foxhole buddies?
Everybody is a friend and a buddy and when you're under attack.
And so did you ever feel, well, like guilty about that, or thinking you could have done something different?
Yes,
And you replay that in your mind?
yes.
And when you returned home, did you have any type of like feelings of nervousness or jitters?
Yeah,
And what would cause that?
thinking.
Thinking. What about like loud noises? Would that like make you startle?
Fireworks.
Yeah.
Drive you nuts.
And when did that start?
That'll start from day 1.
And has that gone away?
Not completely.
Did you ever have to like scan? Are you like looking for, you know, whether it's booby traps, mines, or
Yeah,
did you have that experience?
I've had it, but I got myself over it. Yeah,
That also happened when you returned home for a while?
yeah.
How long did it take for that to fade away?
Oh, God, I don't know. That was one of the first things I tried to push out, because otherwise it'd go crazy.
Because I guess when you're in charge of a machine gun team, that's kind of your goal. You're looking always for something that's going to happen, right?
Yep, yep,
Sudden movements.
yep.
But luckily for you, that went away pretty quickly.
That went pretty quick.
But the jitters, some of the guilt or second guessing, that still remains, and the nightmares.
Yeah.
Anything else that still affects you from Korea to this day?
It's still the thoughts, yeah. Yeah.
Like what type of thoughts?
Well, you run this through your mind, what took place and so on. And you remember all the things, and then always, what could I have done different? You know, that still remains with you.
And I guess in part it's and you tell me if I'm not right, but the shock of the carnage that you saw, that's just something that you...
That's part of it.
Yeah. And when did you come home?
I was discharged in October of '52, October 28th.
And where did you arrive when you came back to the States?
Camp Carson, Colorado.
And how did it feel to be back home?
You can't believe it's great.
You were happy to be home.
Yep.
And how were you welcomed home?
My parents and my wife met me at the bus when I got off here in Mitchell, South Dakota.
All right, so you took a bus from Camp Carson?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how was that moment?
Very, very refreshing.
And what was the first thing you did when you got home?
Well, the first thing I did is kiss my wife.
Mm-hmm. And what else did you do? Is there something that you were missing in Korea that you thought, you know, when I get back home, I'm going to go do that?
Well, 1,000 things go through your mind, and you get a little goofy over some of it. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, and well, it doesn't all work that way.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I want to get, the first thing you want to do is get settled, you start a family, and live your life.
And when you got back, so what did you do then when you got back?
I went to work for a furniture store here in town, which is not here anymore, but and then I went to school in Minneapolis for carpet laying and linoleum laying, and that's what I did.
And that,
I worked for them for 20 years, and then I went on my own.
you started your own business then?
Yeah.
And that's what you retired from doing?
Yep.
Okay. And did you have children?
5.
Okay. And what do they all do?
Well, I got a son in Minneapolis, and then I got 4 daughters, and they're scattered all over. One in Aberdeen, one in Canton, one in Chicago, and one in Tennessee.
Wow. Whatever happened to the family farm?
Actually, the family farm was lost in 1936 foreclosure on my folks.
That's too bad.
Yeah. But we stayed out there till it was in the late 40s.
And did you stay in contact with any of your friends from the service?
Yes, I have one very good friend in Madison, Wisconsin. Right, I talked to his wife here 2 weeks ago, but he is not mentally capable anymore. So he doesn't know what's going on.
That's too bad. But he's a buddy of yours you stayed with for many years. Yeah.
We were together, very close to each other, all during the war.
Is there anything you would like to add that I did not ask you?
Well, like I mentioned, you said it, war is hell. I do not condone it, but it's a necessity that we need this country to be strong with to avoid these wars, because people do not understand what the cost of freedom is. And I think that's something that we should be teaching them what the cost of freedom really is. It's not just a cost of war, but it's a cost of lives and everything else. So that would be my suggestion.
And does the cost of freedom also include not only the lives, but the impact that the war had on the people that returned?
Yes, very much so.
Like, you are still paying that cost.
Right, yeah.
And that's a cost that maybe a lot of people don't appreciate.
Well, that's a cost that people do not realize. Yeah.
And besides what you just mentioned, is there anything you would like to tell future generations?
Well, this is my perspective, but I think we need a good, strong military. Otherwise, these other countries are going to be looking at us and saying, hey, they're a little weak, let's take them, get all their values, their resources, their riches. And that's what I think we better be on the ball on.
Okay. Well, Melvin, I want to thank you so much for
Thank you.
for one, for your service, one, and for two, for giving the interview.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you very much.
Yeah.